Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is diving deep into something that's affecting all of us, the economy. We've all seen it, inflation is rising, the dollar is losing value, and things are getting more expensive by the day. You might be wondering, what's happening to my money? Well, the short answer is that we're in the middle of a monetary crisis. But the good news? There's a potential solution that's been around for thousands of years, gold and silver. Now, you might be thinking, are we really going to go back to using gold and silver? That's exactly what JP Cortez, the executive director of the Sound Money Defense League, is going to explain. He's going to break down why these precious metals could be the answer to America's economic collapse. But first, let's get into some background on what's going wrong with our money today.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point about the monetary timeline here in the United States. And you're right, it's been about 50 years, 1971, since President Nixon closed the gold window. It ended gold interconvertibility with gold and the U.S. Federal Reserve note. And before that, we had a Bretton Woods system. And before that, what was more known as a classical gold standard. But what we're seeing is we don't necessarily need a top-down approach to money at all. We don't need a congressional act declaring a national gold standard because that sort of misses the point as well. Gold is not money. Gold does not make a great standard because the government says so, but because gold is in and of itself money. Like you were saying, historically, when people wanted to save money, they simply held money because money was either actual gold or it was a certificate backed by gold. It was backed by something hard. That isn't the case today. So people need to find more creative ways to preserve their wealth. They're risking it all on risky crypto tokens. They're investing in market funds and ETFs and stocks that they don't even really understand in many cases because everyone's trying to beat this inflationary pressure that the government is actively and openly imposing on us.
Okay, so you're not necessarily talking about going back to a situation where you have a US dollar or other currency fully backed by precious metals, but it's as much about education around the idea of the impact of fiat currency and money printing and the lack of those kind of fundamental characteristics of sound money in our money today. And the idea of those characteristics existing in gold and silver and bringing that understanding to a wider audience. Would that be a fair comment?
The understanding and the education is such an important part of what we're doing here. Here in the United States, there are more than 7,400 state legislators, elected legislators that are ostensibly making the decisions that govern the people, the lives of the people in the United States. The vast majority of these 7,400 elected legislators have never heard the term sound money. They've never considered questions about why do we use money? Where does it derive its value? What traits make a good money?
So what exactly is sound money? It's money that retains its value over time, unlike the paper currencies that are susceptible to inflation and devaluation. Gold and silver have been around for centuries, holding value in every economic system, unlike the dollar, which can be printed endlessly, causing its value to drop. It's interesting that JP highlights how gold and silver are not valuable because a government says so, but because they have intrinsic value that has stood the test of time. These metals are durable, divisible, and universally accepted, qualities that any currency should have if it's going to be reliable long-term.
We've worked in 2024 to pass 7 laws that remove taxes on precious metals, that empower state treasurers to hold physical metals on their state's balance sheets, and to remove other onerous restrictions getting in the way of people actually getting to use gold and silver as money. So there's the education piece, of course. There's the legislative piece, but there's a third piece, which is the game theory piece. As states readopt their own gold standards, as states bolster their own state finance reserves with physical gold, we might find that other states start doing the same. And we've been seeing that over the last 10 years. What started with a very niche project in Utah in 2011 has now turned into dozens of states passing legislation to build depositories, to end taxes on precious metals, to make gold and silver legal tender. All of these things started as a small little flare and now has taken a blaze, and states all over the country are introducing this. And now with an incoming president, and to be sure, you shouldn't necessarily trust politicians, but an incoming president who is who's saying these things that are reminiscent of Ron Paul. He's talking about ending the Federal Reserve. He's talking about potentially backing money and how that would be good. So the gold and sound money is in the middle of where we can see a monetary renaissance all around the world. I'm sure you've seen the BRICS countries. I'm sure you've seen all the news coming out of gold-backed alternatives that other countries are thinking about cooking up. Countries all over the world are gravitating towards what they believe is a money that can't be manipulated or politicized or inflated. And what we're finding is that they're all coalescing around gold, individuals, states, and countries, and they're all coalescing around gold.
You talked there about the amount of legislators that are involved in these processes and how the vast majority of them don't necessarily understand the term sound money. If you go beyond them, the general public, I mean, it's a term that really doesn't exist in most individuals' lexicon. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely would.
And in order to kind of progress this movement, there needs to be a wider understanding of sound money.
There absolutely does.
How's that? How do you think that will be achieved in the years to come?
I'm actually, unfortunately, sad to say that the Federal Reserve is doing my job for me. There is no stronger argument for sound money than a diligent homeowner or housekeeper going to the grocery stores and noticing that their grocery bill has shot up 40% year over year. There is no more diligent record or metric of inflation than actual human experience.
Here's where the dollar fails us. The government's ability to print more money at will means that the value of your savings is constantly at risk. We've all felt it. Prices are going up, but your paycheck isn't stretching as far as it used to. That's the result of inflation, a direct consequence of an oversupply of paper currency. Gold and silver, on the other hand, don't suffer from inflation in the same way. They're limited resources, so their value is tied to scarcity, not manipulation.
The news stations say. They don't talk about the massive amounts of credit card debt that America is under. They don't talk about how many of Americans don't have the savings to afford 1 month or a single emergency expense. America is drowning right now. And questions, this is what is inspiring some of these questions. Now you're having questions around the dinner table. American families saying, hey, wait, our money isn't buying as much as it used to. Why is that? Why is it that our money's value is dropping? And at the same time, again, this people's purchasing power falling, coupled with people living in America and seeing the American political situation play out. Wait, we have millions of billions of dollars for Ukraine. We have millions of dollars for Israel. We have millions of dollars for everything. But people here in America are suffering from food insecurity. My state, the state that I live in, half of North Carolina was drowned in a massive hurricane recently, and there was the federal support that was offered was very questionable. So people here in the United States, they're not blind to this. They're not, despite governments and economists and pundits telling them, it's the inflation is in good shape. Americans know, the people around the world know that their dollar isn't going as far. The same way historically, when in Rome, when they started clipping coins, the soldiers that were fighting Rome's bloody wars on those horrible battlefields didn't appreciate coming home and finding that they'd been paid in clipped mystery metal. And that's what eventually leads to societal dissolution. This is what leads to people acting out. This is what leads to increased crime and poverty. They're all symptoms of a broken money, which is toxic to a civilization.
But that broken money, though, is unfortunately still in control of the government and the Fed, and they have over the decades always used the ability to print money to expand the monetary supply for their ends. It has allowed them, whether it was in the 1970s, allowed them to continue to fund the Vietnam War, for example. Surely this, in order to change that type of behavior, that takes a kind of serious revolution in whatever sense of the word that you want to use. Is that what has to happen in order, or is this just about people learning about the benefits of holding gold and silver?
I think that we will see a monetary revolution. I think that what was once the greatest global monetary system or unit to exist in the world, the US dollar, backed by gold, backed by the strongest country in the world, was politicized and weaponized and perverted until one day it will lose its global reserve currency status. And then one day, like every other paper money in the history of monetary economics, it will die.
While the federal government might not be ready to embrace gold and silver as money, local states are stepping up. These state-level initiatives are crucial because they help remove the barriers to using sound money in everyday life. Imagine not having to pay a tax just to buy gold and silver, or having the ability to use them like any other form of money. It's a real game changer for those looking to protect their wealth from the ever-increasing inflation that's eating away at the dollar.
Countries, even the ones without an adversarial relationship to the United States, are looking around and saying, hey, wait, the United States can put their finger on the scale a little too heavily on this dollar, between sanctions, between their ability to seize assets, between their ability to kick people out of international payment systems. The United States has an outsized amount of power. And so even there was news, if you're familiar, John Nieuwenhuis, who is an excellent gold analyst, recently reported that the Eurozone is considering a gold standard. They're making preparations for that pivot as well monetarily. So I think that we're in the middle of this revolution that you're talking about. And I don't think people are going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly realize, have the scales fall from their eyes and understand that the US dollar has been a political tool that politicians have used to achieve their ends for decades. It is a weaponized instrument. But even if people don't understand that, they can understand the smaller, more bite-sized, easier parts of this to understand, which is, wait, I want a money that holds its value. I want to be able to save my money and know that its value will be there a year from now or 10 years from now. And those are the incremental ways I think that we can see sound money be adopted.
De-dollarization is something that has been talked a lot about on this channel and channels like it, and in the circles that you and I follow and are part of. Do you think that the path that we're heading down a path towards de-dollarization faster than most people appreciate? We're seeing the BRICS revolution, let's call it, the desire for them to move away not just from reliance on the dollar, but reliance on the US market as well. And that while we haven't got any concrete evidence out of them, there is a strong belief that the BRICS unit is going to be somewhere between 40 and 60% backed by tangible assets, particularly gold and silver. So do you think that we're actually much further down that path to de-dollarization than most people understand?
I think that the United States, through its actions, is inviting competitors. It is actively inviting competition to the US dollar. Whether or not any of these competitors are in a position to actually overtake the dollar, that I doubt. We are certainly moving towards that, towards eventually one of these people overtaking, one of these instruments, one of these units overtaking the US dollar as the global reserve currency, as the currency or the unit that most of the world's finance is denominated in. I think we're definitely closer to that than we have been, and we're seeing that publicly. Internationally, we're talking about, like you mentioned, the BRICS coalition. We can talk about the Zimbabwe currency that was backed by gold, talk about this Eurozone thing that we just mentioned, and we can talk about how states themselves are moving away from dollar-denominated assets to actually holding physical gold.
Here's where things get really interesting. JP brings in the global perspective. The United States dollar might be the world's reserve currency now, but that's changing. Countries, particularly the BRICS nations, are looking for alternatives. They're considering gold-backed currencies, which can't be manipulated in the same way as the dollar. This isn't just talk. These countries are actively making moves to protect their financial systems from the instability caused by an over-reliance on the dollar. Could we be seeing the dawn of a new financial order?
But I think the reality is that while all these competitors are introducing competition and will hopefully force America's monetary stewards to be more diligent and better about the way they treat and handle America's money, I don't believe that we're in a place that any of these people can actually overtake them. Establishing a gold-backed currency is possible. It is simple even. It can be done. Zimbabwe proved recently they did it. Maintaining a gold-backed currency is much, much more difficult. That requires unbelievable fiscal discipline. It requires low time preference and the ability to plan and think for the future. And these are not traits that most modern expedient politicians have. So while we are talking a great deal about what's happening in Russia and what's happening with these other countries and their gold-backed instrument alternatives, these ideas that they're hatching, I don't expect that any of them have the discipline required to maintain a gold-backed currency over the long term. And for that reason, I think no one's coming for the dollar's lunch quite yet. In fact, if someone is coming for the dollar's lunch as a global reserve currency, it's something like Bitcoin more than it is something like a BRICS currency as it exists today.
Now that you mention it, where does Bitcoin fit into your sound money theories?
It's not something we work on professionally a ton. We have worked with groups here in the United States, the Blockchain Association, on legislation. For example, in North Carolina, we worked on a bill in concert with the Blockchain Association to conduct a study for the state of North Carolina on creating a depository for the state to store the state's gold holdings if it ever chose to invest in physical gold, and the state's Bitcoin holdings. So the state is actively considering these questions, how to store and how to use, how to safeguard these alternative assets. I personally am very pro Bitcoin. I believe it is sound money. I believe that it is decentralized in a way that makes it optimal to the Federal Reserve note. There is no central bank. There is no one at the center of it determining its supply or determining what its value is. So I personally am very pro Bitcoin, but the professional work largely lies in the gold and silver area, in part because gold and silver are the only form of money mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, right? That for thousands of years now, the founders of the country knew the risks that paper money brings they're vast, and the evil that can take place with a monetary printer is astounding. So they were careful to protect against that exact thing.
To wrap things up, JP highlights the core message. Gold and silver are timeless. They've been trusted for thousands of years, and there's a reason for that. In today's world of economic chaos, where governments print money at will, gold and silver provide the stability and security that the dollar simply can't offer. If you're looking for a way to protect your wealth in an unpredictable financial landscape, these precious metals might just be the answer. As we've seen today, gold and silver aren't just relics of the past, they're real, tangible solutions to America's economic collapse. The dollar's value is steadily eroding, and inflation is a growing concern for many of us, but there's hope. By embracing sound money in the form of gold and silver, we can start to regain control of our financial futures. If you haven't already, now might be the time to learn more about sound money and consider incorporating these precious metals into your financial strategy. Now, if you found this video valuable and you want to diversify your investments beyond traditional stocks and bonds, I have just the thing for you. Even though I believe that investing in a low-cost index fund is the best long-term investment for the average Joe, the benefits of solid physical gold are hard to deny. I think of physical gold as insurance against unpredictable times, and I'm not the only one. In 2023, central banks added over 1,000 tons of gold to their reserves, the second highest annual purchase in American history. And in 2024, central bank got another 290 tons of gold in just the first 3 months of the year. If the biggest banks in the world are buying tons of gold, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I found a company that allows ordinary Americans to own and securely store physical bars of gold as part of their IRA account. The best part is that they're giving away a free guide to teach you all about investing in solid physical gold. If you want to learn more about how gold can protect your retirement savings, just click the link in the description to receive a completely free gold IRA guide.